At 13 years old, I was put on puberty-blocking medication, and only a month later, I was given my first testosterone injection. At 15, I went under the knife for a radical double mastectomy.
Chloe Cole is an 18-year-old detransitioner from female to male back to female, and here's her story.
My name is Chloe Cole, and I am an 18-year-old former transgender child. I transitioned from the age of 12 up until 16 when I realized it all was a lie. How did we get to the point where nearly every pediatric institution in the country considers it best practice to remove the healthy breast tissue of children while administering drugs typically used to chemically castrate high-risk sex offenders?
Preach. This is absolutely unethical, and it needs to stop immediately. We're potentially sterilizing young kids because they're confused about their identity. The kids do not deserve this. Obviously, we're reacting to this story right now, and there are thousands of stories like this. If you're wondering what this is all about, I got 2 moles removed, so I'm gonna look like this for a while. I hope you understand.
I was only 12 years old when I told my parents that I was a boy. Like many parents in that situation, they didn't have a clue what to do. They were scared and desperate for answers. They wanted what every parent wants for their child, for me to be okay and thrive.
You can tell how emotional she is when she's talking about her parents. They have been trying to do their best, and I have many parents reaching out to me, asking, what should I do? My kid says that they're trans. I don't believe them. And the system keeps pushing a gender transition on my child, and that's the only advice I can get. I don't want to put drugs into my healthy kid. I'm so emotional when I'm on the phone with these parents because I don't know what to say. If you disapprove of your child's new identity choice, not only will you push them away from you, you'll push them into the trans community. And that's the last thing you want to do. The trans community want to isolate kids and teenagers and say, if your parents are transphobic, cut ties with them. We are your new family. Fuck your old family. And then you should definitely be afraid of your child going through a medical transition because that is what the community is pushing. But only on kids, which is weird. They say that you don't need surgeries and hormones to be trans. However, they're pushing for kids to go through that. So what I tell parents to do in this situation is to, I'm sorry to say this, suck it up. Call your kids they, them. Call your kids he or she, which is the opposite of what you're used to, because you want to keep your kid in your life. That's the most important part here. And then the second thing I always tell parents is to always show love. Always love your children. Always be vocal about supporting your kid. They need that. They need your support. They need to feel like you're there for them. And you may not agree with this whole trans or non-binary thing, however, your kid needs you. But the problem is, we have a broken system that's all about affirming, affirming, affirming. Some parents are scared to even book an appointment where their child can have just a conversation with a gender therapist. They're scared of what's going to happen next. They think it's going to be a slippery slope. And you know what? It is. They have a very valid reason to be scared, in my opinion. Parents are just in an impossible situation to this point, and it breaks my heart.
At 13 years old, on the advice of so-called medical professionals, I was put on puberty-blocking medication, and only a month later, I was given my first testosterone injection. The gender clinic presented my parents with the classic false dichotomy regarding children with gender dysphoria. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son?
This makes me sick to my stomach. I've seen other clips of Chloe where she talks about how the professionals told her parents, if you don't let your kid transition, she's gonna off herself. This is emotional blackmail on the highest level, and it's disgusting. And she even said in another video that she didn't have these ideas of not wanting to live anymore before transitioning. We all know to this point that it's a lie. It's a lie that trans kids are gonna off themselves if they don't get the transition. We have solid proof here. She did not have those ideations before transitioning. So the professionals just straight out lied. Is it because of this? Or is it because of this? Comment down below. Now it all makes sense why the parents let her transition at such a young age. They felt like they didn't have a choice.
My parents were prepared to sign anything the doctors asked. This was not informed consent. It was a decision forced under extreme duress. At 15, I went under the knife for a radical double mastectomy, the kind that breast cancer patients get.
Oh my god, this video is making me so emotional. I'm trying not to cry.
This was after I was sexually assaulted at school by a male student. I just told myself to man up, but I lived my life in constant hatred of my breasts.
Of course you would. That is completely natural. It's trauma. And you see this a lot with detransitioners. They have been victims of sexual assault. And it's completely natural to not want to be in your own body because of that. But it's not the same as gender dysphoria. Transsexual adults who now live their lives as the opposite sex and they live a happy, normal life and they're happy with their transition, they have gender dysphoria for no reason. They were born with it and they discovered it and they treated it. End of story. Detransitioners have gender dysphoria, or they have something maybe very similar to gender dysphoria. That's a total other discussion for another time. They have gender dysphoria for a reason. They mostly have it because of a bad experience. And that's just very important when it comes to who should get a medical transition. If a patient is telling you, a doctor responsible for all this, that they have experienced sexual assault, physical assault, anything in that lane, they have homophobic parents, or they come from a homophobic religion, culture, whatever, and they want to transition, it's a big red flag. However, if you have a patient who had a perfectly normal childhood, hasn't experienced anything traumatic, but for some reason they still have gender dysphoria, or for no reason rather, it's a big indication that the person would benefit from a medical transition. If you have been through traumatic things regarding your own body, a medical transition is just going to make it worse because you're denying what happened, and it's going to be unbelievably painful for these people when they finally realized what is reality, and then they've done stuff to their body that they can't do anything about because it's not reversible.
I realized after maturing a bit more that a child does not in fact know who they are. At 12 years old, I realized that I wanted to be what I always was and forever will be, a woman.
I'm so proud of her for saying that. That is so fucking powerful.
With this realization came a series of challenges that were far worse than the transition. Somehow, I had to get myself off these drugs and tell everyone in my entire life that I was not who I said I was. My parents were shocked and felt like they failed me on every level imaginable.
When I hear people say, a social transition is completely reversible, I mean, yes and no. Listen to what she just said. There's a lot of social and psychological consequences to detransition socially. And I believe the parents must be almost traumatized to hear their child say, I regret all of this. I regret the puberty blockers, the cross-sex hormones, and my double mastectomy. This family and thousands of other families are really going through it, and they deserve all the help that they need. But do they? Do they receive any help? No way, because they're transphobic and bigots, right?
My friends all turned against me because I was evidence that their beliefs were a lie. I was a joke. I was a fraud. I was many years behind in development, incapable of feeding my future children, and worst of all, completely alone.
It is very easy to find friends in the trans community, as long as you agree with their narrative. I think it's very easy to find friends in woke communities. I also think it's very easy to lose them again the second you disagree with one tiny thing, or realize you made mistakes that are so deep and sad, they're nowhere to be found. And that just shows how evil these people are. When we're talking about LGBT culture, detransitioners, they need the most support and help, period.
Most politicians on the left and right have done nothing but get into Twitter fights on this issue. There is no second chance at childhood, so we must do our best as adults to guide our children to pathways that lead to healthy bodies and minds instead of depression and disfigurement. No child deserves to suffer under the knife of a gender-affirming surgeon. America's children, all children, deserve better. Thank you.
She is so awesome. I love her. She makes me tear up a little bit. She's the most well-spoken 18-year-old I know. She's more well-spoken than these 50-year-old men at Daily Wire. I'm sorry I said it. She's so mature, and that's of course because of the transition and detransition. She's gonna do great in the future, and she's gonna be one of the most important voices out there in the community. That's for sure. Yes, I am an adult transsexual, happy with my transition, but I, of course, with all my heart, support the people who weren't happy with their transition and had to detransition. And I think the more transsexual people should stand up for detrans people. It is such an important fight. No matter what, no matter how much gatekeeping that detrans people they fight for, we can still exist as happy transsexual individuals, and we can still have access to the medical transition because our gender dysphoria is valid and no one can talk us out of having it. So we need gatekeeping to save people from making a mistake. And we should of course make it illegal for kids to go through a medical transition. That's all I have for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you want to see more content like this. Remember to hit subscribe and the notification bell. If you want to support me with a small donation, feel free to do it under super thanks. It'll mean a lot to me. And I'll see you all in my next video.